Thank you, Panashwari. Thank you, A.S.Dalal. Today, we begin the satsang with a topic that is of significance, importance to spiritual seekers of all paths, and even more so to the followers of integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo. As Vijay Sri Garu said, this is the subject of psychic being, which is our Atma, our Antaratma. And it is something that has been emphasized across all streams of Sanatana Dharma. So that is the importance of this course. The number of sessions of the course, we will keep it flexible as we progress, and depending on our interactions, we may take a little longer time, lesser time. And we are also keeping an element of flexibility as per the date of the session. We will announce it each session a week or 10 days before, with the idea that in case there is any travel program, etc., that intervenes or other difficulties crop up, we can still do the course at least one session every 3 to 4 weeks. And also, as the practices are given and reading material is indicated, I would urge all the participants to take the time during the intervening period and be consistent with the practice. In spiritual path, we all know, but it is good to remember that more than the intensity of practice once in a while, it is actually the persistence and regularity that helps us progress. So let us commit ourselves to inner progress, spiritual progress, and let us invoke the blessings of our gurus to help us in this journey that may span 8, 10, 12 months, we will see. Now, before we go into the subject itself, there is a note that I wish to share with you verbally in terms of spiritual terminology, because many of you may not have heard the word the psychic being. As you explore Sri Aurobindo, you will see more and more different words. So why so many different words? The mother says, one of the greatest difficulties for most philosophies is that they have never recognized or studied the different planes of existence, the different regions of the being, means our own being. There are different paths to us. Language and spirituality have an interesting intertwining. Language is a means of communication. And that communication is effective when we have shared objective experiences. For example, when we teach a child A for apple, B for ball, C for car, the child grasps it, we grasp it. An apple can never be confused with a car, and a car can never be confused with an apple, because it is a shared objective experience. We can see it, we can touch it, we can feel it. The color, the taste, the smell. Now, when we extrapolate language to the spiritual domain, how do you communicate something like states of consciousness? States of consciousness is essentially a subjective experience. How does language help someone else understand my state of consciousness? It's a little not so easy, so to speak. when you talk of intuition versus clairvoyance, when you talk of a vision versus a dream, today science has progressed so much. Yet, when you take 10 people, a philosopher, a psychologist, a biologist, a zoologist, put them into one room, they cannot, as of today, come up with a consensus of what is consciousness. They can't agree. We do not yet have a quote unquote scientific definition of consciousness. In fact, there is research going on the field of hard problem of consciousness. How do you define it? Now, how do you overcome this problem? Sri Aurobindo has worked on the states of consciousness and spiritual experiences in a lot of detail. He gives a framework, or he gives a set of terms with which it takes time to get familiar, but to take time, we need to be familiar. We need to be persistent. We need to understand the term. We need to understand the various shades of meaning of that term. And till that understanding, be patient and learn. It is easy to turn our back saying he's too complicated or this is too much material. I'll give you another example. When Nirvana Shatkam, Manobuddhya Hankara Chittanina, Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahankara. These four terms were written some 1500, 2000 years ago. At that time, the understanding of human physiology, biology, etc. was very minimal. Our anatomical understanding was very minimal. For instance, many old schools of thought across cultures, they use the word heart to refer to the thinking of the man. So, for example, if you say a person with a dark heart, no matter whether you belong to West or East, you understand that this is somebody who is scheming, planning to the detriment of others, to his own egoistic gratification. That is a dark heart. But it is not the heart that has dark thoughts. It is not the heart that actually plans. It is the mind. Today we know thoughts and mind are a function of brain anatomically, and heart is more about emotions and feelings. We even know to the extent that a mind, a brain, etc., produce 63,000 thoughts in a day on average. So we have gone to that level of understanding. When Sri Aurobindo wrote voluminously, there has been some progress in the anatomical physiological domain compared to 2000 years ago. So one thing he pointed out is, he said, I did not use the old terminology because today it would be confusing. And when he had his spiritual experiences, in some cases, he had to kind of coin his own words. I urge you to take the time to get familiar with them rather than struggle with them. Be patient. We can share amongst each other if there are questions to clarify, etc. Some of the terms he has used: physical, vital, mental, inner being versus outer being or surface being, subconscient, inconscient, superconscient, subtle physical, subliminal. In the gradations of the mind, various states of consciousness one arrives at as one progresses. Higher mind, intuitive mind, illumined mind, overmind, supermind. So there are all these terms, but be patient. You don't need to learn all of them at one go. You may not even need to know most of them for this course. I'm only giving you an example. Psychic being is one such term, and we will see what it means. We just have to grow, let these words and terminologies grow on us as they're relevant. So do not get too worried about it. In this course, in the group that is together, I'm glad to see several people who have an advanced understanding of Sri Aurobindo's works themselves. So there is adequate number of people who can work together, all of us, to address any questions and share amongst each other what we come across in terms of quotations and notes and clarifications. So, that is a background note I wanted to share with you. Now, we get into the early comments of psychic being. It is the Antaratma. Even though the term psychic being is new to us, Antaratma is not new to most Indians. It is the inmost soul. And in Upanishads, it is said, Angushtamatra Purusha Antaratma. So it is said that inside the cavern of the heart, there is a small flame the size of one's thumb. That is the divinity within man. I will read a few lines of Savitri and we will proceed. It is the first passage I read talks about the Divine Mother and how she has come down and entered our hearts. In the book of Yoga in Savitri, it is said, but since she knows the toil of mind and life, as a mother feels and shares her children's lives, she puts forth a small portion of herself, a being no bigger than the thumb of man, into a hidden region of the heart, to face the pang and to forget the bliss, to share the suffering and endure earth's wounds, and labor mid the labor of the stars. In another place in Savitri, the lines go as follows. A mutual debt binds man to the Supreme. His nature we must put on as he put ours. We are the sons of God and must be even as he. His human portion we must grow divine. Our life is a paradox with God for key. If I have to summarize this entire journey of psychic being, it is this one phrase. His human portion, the divine's human portion, we must grow divine. This is the journey of the psychic being. Further, in Letters on Yoga, Sri Aurobindo says, and this passage is there in the book, in the beginning passages, the soul, the psychic being, is in direct touch with the divine truth, but it is hidden in man by the mind, the vital and the physical nature, the vital being and the physical nature. One may practice yoga and get illuminations in the mind and the reason. One may conquer power and luxuriate in all kinds of spiritual experiences in the vital. One may establish even surprising physical siddhis. But if the true soul power behind does not manifest, if the psychic nature does not come into the front, nothing genuine has been done. What Sri Aurobindo is pointing out in this passage is that there are many kinds of spiritual lines, there are many kinds of spiritual progress, there are many kinds of spiritual siddhis. During meditation, one can see light, one can see gods. During evolved spiritual states, one can even do astral travel. One can do mind reading. One can develop with a little bit of discipline, intuition as one progresses. But Sri Aurobindo says you can have all these things, but honestly, they don't matter. You may luxuriate in all kinds of experiences in the vital. nothing really matters. Except what? Except the psychic nature, which is in direct touch with the divine truth, unless it comes forward and guides our mind and our vital and our physical nature. Often, in spiritual path, one sees many people who have attained spiritual development on one side, but are unable to express that spirituality in daily life, and they are consumed with the same anger and jealousy and other things. Why? That is because the spiritual nature of psychic hasn't come forward. So this is a caution for all of us. Another passage, we give the name psychic to the psychological center of our being, the seat within us of the highest truth of existence, of our existence, that which can know this truth and set it in movement. It is therefore of capital importance to become conscious of its presence within us. Concentrate on this presence until it becomes a living fact and we can identify with it. Two steps that the mother explains. One, we need to identify with it, and then second, bring it to the front so that our outer nature is governed by it. These are the three passages that are there in the beginning of the book, before the foreword written by Sri Karan Singh Ji, who, by the way, Sri Karan Singh met the mother, took her blessings, and as some of you know, he is the descendant of the Maharaja of Kashmir, and he is considered to be among the more spiritually inclined politicians today. In the second paragraph of the foreword, there is a portion that I would like to read. He says, in the 20th century, he explains there were many outstanding figures like Swami Vivekananda, Ramana Maharshi, Sri Krishna Prem, and so on and so forth. And then he talks about Sri Aurobindo, and he says Sri Aurobindo in particular, with his outstanding intellect, magnificent power of expression, deep yogic attainments, has in his voluminous writings thrown tremendous light upon the whole process of spiritual development. The whole process of spiritual development. You can talk of any dimension of spiritual progress, you find something that Sri Aurobindo has written. And then Karan Singh Ji goes on to write, we speak rather loosely of the soul, but Sri Aurobindo has clearly explored and articulated for us the various levels or degrees of inner consciousness. Note this word. Inner consciousness is not just one vague homogeneous entity. There are degrees of inner consciousness. And he says Sri Aurobindo has articulated these degrees of inner consciousness. Not only he has indicated those degrees based on his experience, but more importantly, he says the methodologies whereby we can grow towards the divine. He explains how step by step we can go towards the divine. In his formulation, the key concept is of what he calls the psychic being. And then Karan Singh Ji goes on to quote two sentences I will read from that fourth paragraph of foreword. Psychic being, it is a portion of the divine and permanent from life to life, taking the experience of life through its outer instruments. There are 2 points he makes here. One, psychic being helps change the outer nature. But second point, which we need to pay attention to, and this is why psychic being is important. Permanent from life to life. It is the progress we make with regard to psychic being that carries forward from life to life. In this life, I may be a great singer and I may attain very high attainment as a singer, or a writer, or a thinker. Much of that may not necessarily go to the next life. Yes, a flavor of aesthetic development may go to the next life, and it may translate into a singer can be a dancer because you may have the the aesthetic perceptions, but not necessarily the talents or skills. But what goes from life to life? It is the essence, which is the psychic being. And this is why the study of psychic being is very important. Then we go to the preface. Preface section. I will just quickly touch upon the entire thing and then I will move forward. I will actually digress, but I will tell you. So this book aims at three objectives, three main objectives. First, helping one become more conscious of what most human beings are entirely unconscious. What is it? Our soul. We all agree that while we know that we have a soul, very rare is a human being whose soul guides his life. We know there is a soul, but we really have nothing to do with it. It is there somewhere inside, and we hope it is there and we think it is there, but we really don't know how to bring the soul forward. So, first thing he says this book is geared towards is making us conscious of our soul. The second, to describe and clarify various states of consciousness that pertain to the experience of the soul. So, first, become aware of the soul. Second, soul is not a monolithic entity. It is not like I found a pen or I found a book. Soul is a state of consciousness, and there are many states of consciousness between our outer nature and our inmost soul. So what this book is supposed to do is to help us clarify various states of consciousness pertaining to the experience of the soul. And third, transformation of the outer being with the help of the soul. So three things. Become aware of the soul, that there is something. Second, clarify how to get closer to that soul. And third, help that soul guide our life. Excuse me. So now I will talk a little bit about the importance of the psychic being. We have touched upon it. And this is one of the areas many people ask, how is Sri Aurobindo's yoga different from traditional yogas? There are two things I will tell you quickly. One, in the traditional yogas, whether it is Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, etc., we all talk about the soul, but none of them really tell you step by step how to reach your soul. The closest we come to is that Yoga Sutras, Yama Niyama, go through the purification and gradually you will reach your soul sometime. Sadhana Chatushtaya, Shad Sampatti, work on yourself, purify your being, eventually you will get to the soul. Even though the paths have talked about going to the soul, a precise path has not been laid out to the best of my knowledge. We don't know if it is there, we don't know how to approach it and connect to it, and we don't know how to live in it or live as it, live as the soul. The Mother and Sri Aurobindo have given a direct path. Where is the soul located? Understanding of why is it so difficult to find and why is it hidden from our side? How to go inside towards it, how to bring it forward, and then how to change our nature in its light. They have gradation by gradation given description. This is one important part of how Sri Aurobindo's yoga is different from other yogas. The second point I will mention, but we will not dwell too much upon it. In the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. The goal of all paths is moksha. Go beyond this body and merge into the divine. But Sri Aurobindo's path says, become the divine and work in becoming an instrument of the divine in perfecting the humanity and the terrestrial existence as we stand today. So you become God, or you become as close to God as close an approximation as possible. Purify yourself and then work here and be the divine worker and transform the world. So this is an important distinction. So for normal people like us, why is psychic realization important? Yet again, I keep coming back to emphasizing in this class about why is it important to do this course, or why is it important to do this sadhana? Why is psychic realization important? When we talk about the objectives of human life, at a certain point, the average age of participants is around 50 here. So most of you have gone through a sizable part of life. So two things. If you ask senior citizens, many of them say, I want to have peace of mind and I want to live in peace. Others would probably come close and say, I want to find happiness. Happiness and peace basically define the goals of human existence once you mature into life. Mother says, true happiness does not depend on external circumstances of life. One can obtain true happiness and keep it constantly only by discovering one's psychic being and uniting with it. We all have gone through life long enough to say that true happiness does not depend on external circumstances of life. Or if I change that word true happiness to lasting happiness, permanent happiness, prolonged happiness. Because all objects give us happiness momentarily, maybe week, year, decade. So true happiness comes from the soul because that is its property. Satchid Ananda, that is who we are. So for spiritually normal people like us, even for those who are just stepping into spiritual path compared to worldly life, it is important because this is where the secret key to permanent and lasting happiness lies, discovering one's soul. For people who are serious about spiritual progress, this is self-realization. Isn't it what all of us want? Those of us who come to spiritual life, we want self-realization, right? Well, this is it. So, even if we are tentatively taking the first steps from material life into spiritual life, or even if we are sadhaks who want to develop and try to attain spiritual realizations, psychic being is a necessary part of that journey. The mother refers to psychic being as the inmost being. So please do pay attention. This part is actually something that holds the key for the next half of this session. We talked about the outer being or the surface being. The mother talks of psychic being as the inmost being. So you have the surface being on the outside, which is constantly moving, and there is psychic being, which is the soul. Between the two, there is a gap. And this, Sri Aurobindo uses the word inner being. This class is to introduce to you the inner being because one can't leap from outer surface consciousness right into the soul. The journey doesn't work like that. You can't take that leap. One has to work through layer by layer by layer. So there are three layers. The outer being or the surface being, which is our normal day-to-day existence. The way we talk, the way we walk, the way we think. These are not very complicated. We all know what the surface being is. Then comes the inner being, then comes the psychic being. And when we talk about this, we should actually go a little bit more into the surface. When we talk about surface being, we talk about physical, vital, mental, right? The terminology that we heard both from Vijayasri Garu and me. So what is this physical, vital, and mental? For those of you who come from the traditional literature, In the Taittiriya Upanishad and in other Upanishads, we have the Pancha Kosha. Physical being, Annamaya Kosha, the body. Vital being, Pranamaya Kosha. Mental being, Manomaya Kosha. Sri Aurobindo's yoga emphasizes a detailed awareness of this physical, vital, and mental, because this is where we are and this is what we are today. This is our existence. We can't think of us without the physical, right? And the minute we say, Srinivas, you have a certain form in mind. The minute we say, Vijay Sri Garu, the first thing is the physical. Our consciousness is all the physical. We have to first of all understand what does it mean. The physical, our body, and our a little bit beyond that, we are all governed by habits and routine. That is the philosophy behind existence, habits and routine. We get up at a certain time, we have to have a cup of coffee. We sleep at a particular time, we have to sleep in a particular posture. We have certain kind of food. If the food changes, the body has problems. All of this habit and routine. And what is the guiding philosophy? Comfort and pleasure and indulgence in habits. The physical is always looking for comfort. It doesn't like discomfort. Vital. It is governed by desire and ego. These two elements are so profound that entire Bhagavad Gita talks about this one. If we can remove these two out of our life, we would probably be on the gates of self-realization, desire and ego. So how does it manifest? What is the common behavior patterns of desire and ego-driven vital life? Pursuit of wealth, pursuit of power, feverish pursuit of desires, restless pursuit of desires. Buddhism calls it Trishna, thirst. And what is it after fulfillment of desire? It is full of raga, dvesha. It wants change. It doesn't like, if you want to meditate at 4 o'clock Brahma Muhurta one day, sometimes we all get these inspirations. I really have to I'm wasting my life. I need to get into serious spiritual sadhana. I want to get up at 4 in the morning and meditate. What happens? For 10 days we do it very seriously. After that, today let me maybe sleep a little bit more. Last night I slept late anyway. Some excuses. It doesn't like disciplined routine, the vital being. Even the best pleasure you give it, after 10 days, it outgrows that pleasure. The best happiness you give it, after 10 days, it outgrows that happiness. It wants excitement. It wants change. There are impulses. When you want something, you want it now. Instant gratification versus delayed gratification is a good discipline. Comparison of what we have with other people. That is a vital tendency. Pride in one's own caste. That is a vital tendency. Anxiety, aggression, all these are vital being. And this is who we are. And all of this needs to be changed in the light of the soul. What is mind governed by? The mental. So we did physical, we did vital, and we are doing mental. Mental is governed by logic and reasoning. Constant thinking, 63,000 thoughts. And the mind has another interesting property. It is always rushing in justification of the vital. Desire and ego draw the mind to support them by their logic. And honestly, if you observe, even though most of us say we are rational people, our behavior at very critical times is actually emotional. The vital overtakes the mind. So our mind is restless, constantly in motion, and all of this. This is what we call the surface being or the outer being. Or this is the normal, physical, vital, and mental. And there are no compartments between them. If the vital is angry, your physical starts shaking and your mind starts thinking agitatedly. If you don't sleep properly for one night, the next day morning, your energy levels are weak, the vital is weak, and the mind is restless or tamasic. So these are how these three things work. Now, let us understand the difference of outer being and inner being. What is this inner being business? In the traditional literature, inner being was described as manas, manobuddhya, ahankara, chitta. There is the inner being, antakarana, the conscious mentality. The inner instrument is divided in the old system as chitta, basic mental consciousness, manas, the sense mind, buddhi, the intelligence, and ahankara, the ego idea. So this is how it is. So the identification of inner being existed earlier also. Now we are paying more attention to it. The very first step, Sri Aurobindo says, the very first step in getting out of the ignorance is to accept the fact that the outer consciousness is not one's soul. It is not one's self, and it is not the real person. First, he is laying out the first step. This Nama Rupa is not the soul. So what is it? It is only a temporary formation on the surface for the purposes of the surface play. Temporary formation. The soul, the person within, is not on the surface. The outer being is a means of expression only. One must not identify with it, for what it expresses is a personality formed by the old ignorant nature. So there is the inner being, there is the outer being. Swami Vivekananda, he gave a talk in New York. The title of the talk was The Real and Apparent Man. The real and the apparent man. So you understand, this has its echoes. This formulation of outer being and inner being has its echoes across paths. There is another deeper consciousness within him, his true inner being, which is his real self, but is covered by the superficial nature. The surface nature and its habitual responses have to be pushed out and can be got rid of altogether, completely. The sadhak must cease to live in the outward things and live in his inner being. Elsewhere, Sri Aurobindo describes the same thing with a good imagery. He says there are two different consciousnesses: the outward one in which he lives and the inward one in which he knows nothing of it. At first, the inner consciousness seems like a dream and the outer is the waking reality. Afterwards, the inner consciousness becomes the reality and the outer is felt as a dream. Mother calls it reversal of consciousness somewhere. Our inner being and our outer being are very different, and the outer being, we saw all the characteristics of the outer being. So what are the characteristics of inner being? The inner consciousness is a place of deep peace, light, happiness, love, closeness to the divine, the presence of the divine mother. So all the beautiful things we want from a spiritual life are all inside of ourselves. They are not elsewhere. In Kabir's Doha, there is a Kasturi Kundal Muve Base, Mrug Dhunde Ban Mahi, something like that. Kasturi Mrug, it is a fabled animal which smells perfume and it searches for the perfume all in the woods. But actually, that perfume is radiated from inside of it. So here we are as that creature, running around everywhere to find the divine, find peace, find happiness. And the truth is, it is all in our own inner being. We just have to shift our consciousness from outer to inner. This is the moral of the story. Inside, how is the inner being? Centered and concentrated. Outer being is distracted. Inner being is ingathered and collected. Outer is dispersed. There is disquiet and agitation, but inner being is a substratum of peace, means a platform of peace. The outer being is physical, vital, mental, is involved with its instruments, the body, the emotion, the thought. We are involved in it. We think we are that. The inner being is Sakshi, it is detached and separate. Ego is again a part of the outer being's manifestation. The inner being, it is devoid of separation and division, it is universal. So now we have an understanding, outer surface being, inner being, and the inmost being. How to awaken the inner being? Right? After all, now that we know that all of this is inside of us, how do we awaken it? Simple mantra mother gave us. Step back. She says, we men live as though we are projected outside of the body. Our emotions, our ego, our all sorts of things are projecting. And when two people come together, there is a clash of these projected elements, the egos in particular. How can he say that? How did she do that without asking me? All this kind of. And when mother guided sadhaks to work, she would say, before you say or do anything, step back for a moment. Connect inside and then pursue. Proceed to say what you are saying or do what you do. Simple mantra, step back. We call it as one of the Mahavakyas of integral yoga. Step back. Sri Aurobindo says, there are many things, but we'll go one by one. How do we awaken the inner being? By dhyana, you awake the inner being. Dhyana, meditation. I will attempt today, if possible, to have a brief meditation, depending on the time. If not, we will do it another session, but we will try. One has to only get into contact with the inner being and change the outer view and consciousness from the inner. That is the work of sadhana. Nalinikanta Gupta ji says, the first dawning of the spiritual life means the coming forward, the unveiling of this inner being. The first step, Sri Aurobindo says, is to become conscious and separate from the old nature. The old nature is the surface creation of Prakriti. There is also the usage of the terms Purusha and Prakriti in the traditional literature, including Bhagavad Gita. So the outer being, in a way, is the Prakriti and the inner being is the Purusha. And then Sri Aurobindo emphasizes behind this inner being is the psychic being. Behind the true mental and vital being, supported by the psychic being. This true being is calm and wild. You have been accustomed to feel that your outer consciousness as if it were yourself. So this is a psychological separation we have to make. We are accustomed to thinking of ourselves as the outer consciousness. But as we do sadhana, you must learn to live in the inner being and feel the outer as something that is a little outside. A time comes when the pressure of the developed inner being upon the mind and life and body becomes so great that they begin to lose their aboriginal, unregenerate freedom, the freedom of doing as they like. And now they have to pause and they have to come into a habit of listening to the deeper inner voice and obey the direction. These words are of Nalinikanta Gupta. So, when I particularly work with youth, spirituality is very complex for youth. So I give them a very simple sutra of how to lead a spiritual life. And even though the sutra is simple, it applies to all the seekers of spiritual path. I mentioned to them, don't do something that is wrong knowing that it is wrong. Don't do anything wrong knowingly. Most of the times when we make choices, these are conscious, deliberate choices. The first step of moving from outer being to inner being is to cultivate this habit of stepping back, and two, not doing something knowing that it is wrong. These things will allow us to slowly pull back the surface consciousness. Basic steps. Don't be disheartened. There are more things that will come. We are going to go through this step by step. For the first few weeks, our attempt and our practice should be to step back and to pause and not let the habits carry us, and try not to let an outward expression that is not in tune with the inner aspiration. This is our first few steps. As the inner being awakes, there are four aspects that unfold. There is an experience of calmness and peace. And Sri Aurobindo says in Letters on Yoga, he says that the foundation of sadhana is establishment of a deep peace. So we have to make sure that we are able to establish a peace inside of us. And the experience of the inner being is the experience of calm and peace. Another experience is the experience of wideness. Wideness makes the adhara stable and established. Narrow calm and peace, a small outer event can come and dislodge it. But a wide calm and peace has the strength to take the shocks of the world, physical, vital, emotional shocks of the world, and allow us to be stable. The third is we develop an attitude of witness, the Sakshi Bhava. Let things happen, but I will not get disturbed. I will not react. All of this happens when we step back and we go inside. A sort of witness attitude in which the inner consciousness looks at all that happens as a spectator, an observer, observing things, but taking no active interest or pleasure in them. A state of neutral equanimity. It goes beyond the duality, which is what the characteristics of outer nature is, vital is. Gradually, one has to stop flowing with thoughts and emotions. As one becomes aware of the inner being, you can catch a negative vibration when it comes. Dear friends, this is the work for the next few weeks. When you become a witness, something bothers you. If earlier we reacted quickly, now we will catch that. We will say, why is this vibration coming into me? Sometimes these are a result of our old vasanas and samskaras, the tendencies. The same event does not trigger two separate people in the same way, no? In our life, same thing that happens to one person, he may react immediately. Another person may feel that reaction inside, but he may not express it. Another person may feel that inside, but also remain calm. Another person, he doesn't even notice it. It is a state of consciousness. So we have to observe what is happening in our mind. What kind of thoughts do I have? And how do I make sure that these restlessness and all, I don't express it? The inner being uses the five instruments, the senses, the same way the outer being has five senses. When we are in the body, the inner being also has the senses, but there is no identification with it. Whereas when I smell good sambar, I may start salivating. That is my outer being response. My inner being, I will still take the rasaswadana, but I don't necessarily get carried away by it. Similarly, other examples, you are all familiar. The fourth part, in addition to the Sakshi Bhava, is intimacy with the divine. There is a sense of divinity. One feels a certain inner divinity, the presence of the mother, the feeling of the vibration of the guru one carries with oneself. The attitude of life also changes. The inner being in the vital life, it is governed by the purpose and meaning of life, not by every transient problem. When we look at others also, we don't look at them as friends and foes, people I like, people I dislike. We go beyond the physical, mental, emotional attributes. We look at them as souls in evolution. When it comes to work, when the outer being is awake and dominant, work looks like chore, drudgery. Work is because we want to earn a living. Work is because we have committed to it. But from the inner being point of view, work is self-offering and self-consecration. It is a means of spiritual development, even if it is a regular job. When we have difficulties, if we are in the outer consciousness, struggle, anxiety, aggression, depression, inner being, if we live in inner being, our reaction would be with equanimity. It is an opportunity for growth. So this is how we shift our consciousness from outer to inner. We shift from a point where Prakriti guides our outer life to divine guides our outer life. The imperfections may remain in the outer being, but they do not affect the inner being. And gradually the inner being changes the imperfections to perfection. Now, what we will do is we will try to take 10 minutes to do a small meditation, and then we will take question and answers. As we have indicated in the WhatsApp group, we will try to spend about an hour the session and maybe half an hour in addition to that. Some of it may be meditation, some of it may be question and answers. So when you're planning for the future sessions, please plan for about 90 minutes and do take the time to go through the material that is shared with you, the reading for that particular period. So let us spend 10 minutes for a basic meditation today. There are three things that we need to focus on when we sit for meditation. Right now, don't start. I will just tell you what they are. One is, of course, setting up the environment. You saw the WhatsApp messages. We kept saying, please find a place where it is suitable for your meditation so that you don't have people walking by you. The atmosphere and the environment, keeping the phone in flight mode, silent mode, all of that. When you're online, try to make sure you have silenced your computer also. Try to sit in a place where there isn't too much bright light on you. If you're staring at the computer, maybe you can face away from the screen for the duration of the meditation, where you can listen, but the light doesn't affect you. One of the things about setting up the environment is don't resist life and fight with life. Oh, I told you not to come here. Why are you making noises? Let whatever happens around you just flow through you. The resistance creates more disturbance in meditation. So that is the first thing. The second thing is a stable posture. Even now, when you sit, you can slowly sit, change your posture to be erect. Erect means the base of your spine and the back of your head can be in the same line. There is no slouching like this. The shoulders are wider. Normally our shoulders droop. Shoulders are wider. You can just move a little bit of the head rotation because many of you have been watching the screen perhaps. So you can move the head a little bit, move the shoulders a little bit because you've been sitting for some time. Let the energies move. Gentle movement, no strain. The posture, when you do the meditation, let the palms rest on your thighs. And later on, when you sit, see that your feet are not on the floor. Maybe you can have a mat or something under your feet. Basic things, you know most of these. And now you can close your eyes and stabilize into a meditative posture. Now we shift our attention to breathing. Make a note of this sentence. We talked about the outer being and the inner being. The breath is the bridge between the outer being and the inner being. The breath is the bridge. If the outer being is like the 5 horses and the inner being is the charioteer, the breath are the reins of the horses with which we control the horses. Closing the eyes and breathing allows you to shift your consciousness from the outer being to the inner being. Observe your breath. Normally, most of us breathe very shallowly. Keep making a habit of observing your breath at various points during the day. Just close your eyes and see what you're breathing. Most of us will find that our breath does not even extend fully into our lungs. Shallow breathing. Observe your breath now. To move into your inner being, we do a simple breathing exercise. The breath, no forcing, either during inhaling or exhaling. No forcing at all. But gradually we deepen it. Deepen it to your navel. Let the breath go to your navel, your abdomen. Feel the bulge of your stomach region. Be aware where the breath is entering the nostril. Follow it all the way to your navel. This itself deepens your breath. Don't worry about remembering all this. I can send it to you later. Don't let your mind be active. Move your attention only into the breathing process and follow my guidance. Now, breathe the same way without stress, but fill your stomach completely. And let the breath come out gently. If you are slightly perceptive, you will find that you can continue to breathe even after the stomach is full because the lungs can still accommodate more breathing, more air. When you fill your lungs also with air, you can feel your upper body also expand. You know, the chest, the armpits region, the upper back, all they also expand. So now when you breathe, fill up both the abdomen region and the lungs region. And when you exhale, do the reverse. Slowly, without any thrust or force, empty the lungs so that they become like collapsed balloons. Empty the abdomen. Again, fill these two regions completely. Inhale deeply, exhale slowly. Inhale deeply, exhale slowly. Now, while doing the same thing, after you inhale and fill yourself completely where there is no more air that can go in, hold there for your own count of maybe 2 or 4. And after you exhale, completely exhale, and everything is like a balloon that is crumpled. Hold your breath for a count of 2 or 4. Don't force yourself, just be comfortable. And bring your attention to the center of your eyebrows while you do that. Keep it at the third eye position and just do this in a very relaxed method. No strain anywhere. Remember to remain erect with your shoulders back. Do one last round of inhalation and exhalation while holding both after inhaling and after exhaling. Slowly now, move your attention to the top of your head, to the very crown of your head. And slowly bring it down to your forehead, eyes, nose. Take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Just observe these regions from inside. Mouth, throat. Just quickly scan the region from the top of your head to the region of your throat. Observe that it is silent naturally. There is a natural silence there. Let us continue the journey. Bring your attention to the throat. Slowly move it down to your shoulders, upper portion of the chest. Take a deep breath now. Fill your lungs, fill your abdomen. Exhale slowly. Be aware of the changes in the trunk portion of your body while you inhale and exhale. Move lower to your abdomen region, to your navel, to your waist. Scan the region from the neck to the waist and observe a natural silence there. Observe the whole region from the top of the head to the waist and the navel. You're sitting like a statue of silence. This silence is natural to your inner being. Take a deep breath and become aware of the silence. Remember this vibration. Gently extend the scan to the tip of your toes from the crown of the head at your own pace. Go down and gently come back up. Be aware of your presence, your own presence. Be aware of your own being. It is poised, it is serene, it is still, it is silent. Hold to this particular inner presence, inner awareness, and half open your eyes and observe what is around you, but retain this inner presence while you do so. It is as if the inner being is looking through the eyes, like we look out of a window. Close your eyes and take a deep breath again. Scan your being Remain in stillness. You are a statue of stillness sitting in this room, which also is silent. Imprint this. Take a deep breath and let go. Slowly become aware of the extremities of your body, the fingers, the toes, and gently move them. Become aware of the noises and disturbances and other things that are going on around you, the sound of air conditioning, the sound of fan, maybe traffic. You can move your head if you feel any stiffness in the neck. Take another deep breath and let go. Become aware of your entire body, the place where the feet are touching the ground. Maybe there is a little strain in the back. Maybe the shoulders are a little stiff. Gently half open your eyes while retaining your own awareness of your inner presence, inner awareness. That is your inner being. Adjust to the surrounding ambient light. Return to normal breathing and normal being. We have now concluded the meditation. You can turn on your cameras and specifically, if any of you, two things I wanted to ask you. One, do you have any questions on inner being? Second, would you like to share anything about the meditation? These are the two things. You can turn on the cameras and speak, or you can type in the chat box as Dr. Bandana has done.
Namaste to everyone. A mesmerizing experience by this meditation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I feel united with all my body, mind, and all those senses.
Very nice. The work for all of us is to continue this meditation at least once a day. If time and circumstances permit, twice a day. Yes, one comment has come. Felt total peace, didn't want to come back. Yes, that is very good because you have stepped into your inner being where you could feel that peace. Now, our journey is to bring that peace when our eyes are open and we are interacting with people and flowing through life. So I'm happy that you have felt it. Now, let us make that a part of our journey and use that as the basis for the outer life. Thank you, Kalpanaji. Any other questions or comments or on inner being and why it is important and how we need to understand the outer surface being, inner being, and then psychic being. That framework and that progression, I hope it is clear. Yes, I'm seeing a comment here, which I will broaden the scope of it. Sometimes one can feel a certain warmth. Sometimes one can feel physical sensations of that nature also. Sometimes one's body feels very light. That's because you've identified yourself with the inner being, that you feel like you're floating almost. These are all experiences that we observe. We don't look for them, we don't want them, but we observe them. We do not get attached to them either. So just continue to the point as you are doing it, and it may deepen. And as your meditation changes, your experiences also will change.
Thank you so much, Srinivas Garu. I think the member has put it rightly that we don't want to come out of this state of meditation right now. So I guess that's why there are no more questions. It's
I
a
will just read
wonderful,
one
wonderful
quotation of the
meditation.
mother.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Thomas. I'm glad you've been able to go through the journey while being an administrator on the session, because that is a bit of a challenge. I'll read a quotation of the mother. As one goes on the discovery of one's inner being, of all the different parts of one's being, one very often has the feeling that one is entering deep into a hall or a room. This house is the image, a kind of the objective image of your inner being. In accordance with what you see there or do there, you have a symbolic representation of your psychological work. So this is one of the experiences as one goes deeper. One should not cling to the experiences. The reason I did not read this quote before is because probably everyone would want to see that room. No. Each of us will have our own journey and we will go through it. And we will experience it. And we don't cling to any specific vision, experience, or anything like that. But we will try to work with the vibration on it. As Sri Aurobindo said, dhyana is the gateway towards inner being. You can also, mothers, the mantra Om leads towards the opening of the consciousness to the sight and feeling of the one consciousness in all material things, in the inner being and in the supraphysical world. So even Omkara chanting, with which Kameshwari began our session, and if that is your line of sadhana, that also can be helpful. Yes, Vandanaji has a further comment that while in the meditation, your pitch became low at one point in time. Yes, Vandanaji, this is something that does happen because I'm also going through that the inner process, but I will be more conscious of it going forward. Yes, this is something that does happen. I'll be mindful of it. Yeah. During the week, Kameswari, do we keep the group open for questions for a day or two, or how does we can do that for a day or two, and then we can close it. That way, if later people want to ask questions, they can do
Sure,
that.
we'll keep the group open. I think many of the members are disciplined. So as long as we don't get forward messages, I'll keep the group open so that anyone has any questions or they want to share experiences, they can in the group. There is a question.
Yes, there is a question on how to chant Om. I will share with you what Mother has shared. I know there are many schools of thought on it. Basically, making the sound O with the mouth in a round way. O. O. As opposed to Aum, Mother has suggested this. In fact, I will also share with you an experience Mother had in Paris when she had yet to come in touch with Sri Aurobindo in the physical plane or yet to know much of our literature. She went to hear a visitor who came to Paris to talk about on some spiritual subject. And that visitor was from India. And she, as many of you who know Mother's life probably would know, that she was a very advanced adept. Even while she was in Paris, even before she met Sri Aurobindo, she was practically a self-realized soul. That's a very poor definition of what it is, but yes, she was a very advanced adept. So when this person chanted Om, she said, immediately I saw golden light rushing into the room. So this is the way to chant Om in this part. There is a request from Srinivas Garu saying various techniques of dhyana. Yes, we will go through them. Particularly in this series, we will focus on the meditations aligned with the psychic being. So today we made one basic progress. We will further continue to take it up and develop upon it and take up some of the other things that Mother have said. She has indicated one or two other imageries. We will take those up and we will work with them. The key, my dear friends, let us try to make it a regular practice. It is not that we do one session and for 3 weeks or 4 weeks we lose the practice. Please try to practice. It will help the inner journey significantly. Kameshwari, over to you.
Thank you so much. So for our homework, for the participants, we need to step back and pause, practice that, and we need to do the meditation that we have learned today at least once a day. How about reading, Srinivas Garu? Any? Yeah, you are on mute.
Sorry, I will update in the group on the reading section.
Okay. So, and we will
introduction, probably we will try to do the entire introduction chapter, but I will go through it and probably indicate sections as well. We will see, or maybe the entire chapter. We will see how it goes.
Sure. The group will be kept open for questions or discussions, any experiences that you have. So please use the forum to interact with Srinivas Garu. We can all use the WhatsApp group forum. Thanks, everyone. So shall we
Thank
conclude
you.
the session? Any more questions? Thank you.
Rameshwari,
Thank
if you could
Yeah.
stay after the session for a couple of minutes, we will talk a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.